You know what time it is? It's time for an interview with the winner of the Golden Gauntlet World Championship. That's right, we got Zapgaze and his tournament-winning Cerebro 3 deck. Let's get into it. Zapgaze, welcome to the channel. Kind of a first-time, long-time thing going on here. It's like we've been in each other's orbits for like a fairly decent chunk of time. You knew me under my old name, for that matter. Like that's not something a lot of people can say, and I'm very grateful for that, frankly. Like, take us through
it was a good rebrand.
Yeah. Take us through your background, what it is that brought you here, and how you approach this tournament with that background. Because I think that's a very relatable space. A lot of other people who watch me are in that space, and I think that is sort of who I want to watch this video and take things away from it.
Yeah, so I am primarily a competitive Magic the Gathering player, and these days more a commentator for competitive Magic the Gathering, but I've been competing at card games and in the card game sphere for upwards of 15 years now, going back to like 2010. So I've been in the competitive scene for quite a while, and in general, most of my competing days are behind me now. I had a long period where I really did that, and it was great, but it was also really exhausting to sort of be constantly in that mindset of chasing something rather than just being at peace with where you are and appreciating what you're doing in the day-to-day. So I don't really compete much anymore, and about the time when I was sort of stopping to compete and Marvel Snap was released for launch, I started getting into it just as a game that interested me in terms of its mechanics. It was unique enough that it was different from the games that I had played before while still appealing to the skill sets that I enjoy. And I've just been playing it, it's weird to say casually because I play the game every day. Like, I hit Infinite every month. I do all the things that there are to do in the game, but it's still like I play the game for like an hour a day, maybe, like at most. So it feels like it's casual.
I think that's sort of the great victory that Marvel Snap achieved, which is like, because the games are so fast, and this is always what appealed to me. Like when I played Magic, I was a very like, I want the games to be fast. I played mono red aggro. I want it to be done. I want it to just go through that. So Marvel Snap was always like, oh, I get it. Every game is an aggro mirror. All your decisions are incredibly like important and happen all the time. And that kind of game is inherently appealing to me because it's so easy to just be like, GG, go next. And that was a big part of the appeal for like why it is easy to sort of just marathon a lot of this game. You look up and it's been 2 hours and you're just like, oh, okay. And I wanted to get your perspective on the deck choice here, which the only player in the field playing Cerebro 3, this is also just one of those cases where it just sort of serendipitously lined up, though, right? Because you were a Cerebro 3 gamer just by virtue of playing your meme deck, and then suddenly it was just like, this deck is actually really good.
Yeah, like it really was serendipity in the, if you look in my deck collection, the first deck, like the oldest deck, is Cerebro 3, because it's the deck that I've been playing for, 2 years in different iterations of whatever the deck has been, from the way tech heavier version that had Cosmo and armor to counter destroy, and then you have Shang-Chi to counter the big decks and Valkyrie, to the Iron Man versions to bring it lower to the ground. Like, I've played every version of Cerebro, and it's always sort of been there in my collection. And there are times when the deck gets nerfed or certain things get rotated out where it doesn't feel like it fits, and I play other things, but it's still there. And then there are times where it's better. And it was on my radar that the deck was in a good place. It's gotten some tools like Bastion and Macari, with Macari being moved to 3 power. That was a big win for the deck. And then, it was announced earlier on in the week that Umbaku was being buffed to 3 power, and I was playing Umbaku in my Cerebro 2 list. Cerebro 2 was how I qualified for the GG World Championship was I played Cerebro 2 in the first qualifier back in August, and I went 5-1. I picked up a loss against Galactus, I think, and I missed the top 16. The format was you have to go undefeated to essentially make the top 16, but 5-1 gets the qualification for the World Finals. So Cerebro 2 was still there, but it was like, okay, Umbaku got buffed. Now it moves into Cerebro 3 pretty naturally. Same with Lockjaw, which got the buff, or as it was, a nerf to Cerebro 2 back when it happened. It's like, okay, now this package moves into this deck. And, for me, I'm free to play. I don't have a full collection, and I don't try to keep an updated collection.
I mean, so you're going to now.
I can, and I probably will, but
they're giving you 75,000 tokens. You're gonna have it. Like, I think you'll get there.
I can have a full collection for sure. But essentially, it's like, okay, I'm not going to have a full collection going into this event. I'm not going to test everything that changes and happens. So I'm going to go to the person that I know who is the most knowledgeable in my circle of people in the game and ask, hey, what would you do? Right? And I know that you both understand, at least to a certain extent, my interactions with the game and sort of what my skill sets are. And also you understand the game. Your job is to be tapped into things. So you can at least give me an answer, and whether I follow that advice or not, at least I feel like I'm making an informed choice. But when you tell me within the two options that you give me, Mr. Negative, which I've played a decent amount of, or Cerebro, which is my all-time most, I would guess that in that field, I've played more games with Cerebro in my life than anyone in that field had played with their deck, purely as a consequence of Cerebro having been around for so long in different iterations. My Steam says I have 2,500 hours or something in Marvel Snap. Like, I would not be surprised if a fifth of that was me playing Cerebro, right? Like, it's an obscene amount of hours and games played on Cerebro. So when you're like, hey, this is viable, when you're like, hey, this is viable, it's like, yeah, okay, sure. It's a really easy choice. It completely simplifies any sort of having to think about it, because whatever edge, I think, if we even call it as such, Move has over Cerebro in terms of being the best deck, that's irrelevant when it comes to outweighing that edge with experience and the fact that, it seemed like Move is public enemy number one. Cerebro is off everyone's radar.
That's what gets me about this, right? First of all, the joke I came up with during that was you have more hours on Cerebro than Professor X, which I thought was pretty good, but like as time has passed, I think it's like a little less good than I thought it was at the time. The second thing that I really wanted to focus in on here, though, was like the amount that this list was disrespected and is seemingly being disrespected by people who just don't get it or don't play the game at a high level is genuinely kind of astonishing to me. Like, I saw an Ask the Team earlier that was like, were you guys surprised that Cerebro 3 did so well? I'm seeing so many people who were surprised, and I was like, no, it's been really good for like 3 months. And it's like, that's how I felt looking at it, where it was like, really, he's the only Cerebro deck? Because like when I'm working with people, I try to keep myself a little bit siloed, but I know that Butt, for example, brought a Nightmare deck with Red Skull in it, specifically because he was afraid of Cerebro. Like, it's like a very real fear that a lot of top players had, and like, you were the one C3 player in the entire field. The most played cards were Shadow King at 1, Mercury at 3, even though she was not allowed to be played in decks with Moonstone in them, which is her best home, and nobody, except apparently the man you played in the top 8, running a Red Skull. It just wasn't like, even if you think Move is a lot better than Cerebro, I'll take the open field any day of the week.
Yeah, like part of Move being a lot better than Cerebro is 100% contingent on people respecting Cerebro. Like, this is something that's been true about combo decks in any game as long as you can imagine, is if the deck is being properly respected in the metagame, the value of the deck goes down. But as soon as narratives start being spun about okay, well, this deck is far and away the best deck in the field. And the metagame in a format and a game that is 12 cards. So it's not like the size of this deck is smaller than the size of, let's say, the sideboard in Magic the Gathering, right? Like your entire deck is smaller than the sideboard in Magic the Gathering. So when you are making choices of, I need my cohesive game plan and I need to be somewhat prepared for the field, you have to make limited choices, right? So when the narrative is move is the big baddie, and it's like, okay, let's say 8 of the cards in your deck are the cards that make your game plan function, and then you have 4 tech or flex spots. How many of them are you going to devote to Cerebro of all decks, right? That's why Sauron is scary, is because Red Skull is part of the game plan, and it just happens to wreck your deck. Same with the Clog decks that play Viper. Like, they're scary because Viper, Honifer on a pseudo Clog deck was my only loss in the entire tournament. And it was a close loss, but it was a loss where I got 8 cubed in the first round because he gave me a demon from Hood with Viper on turn 4 before I could set up any sort of Cosmo or protection or fill the lanes. It was like 4 mana, play the demon, play Viper, give you the demon, deal with it. And it was still close because, contrary to popular belief, Cerebro doesn't just fold over. You have ways to win, which is, I think, a big thing that when people write this deck off, they forget this.
Yeah, I actually just want to. I want to stop you. I want to stop you right there, and just like, we're gonna tangent off of that, because that was the thing I was the most impressed with in your play. That Nidavellir game that you lost because of just a rogue misplacement, even though like everything went wrong for you that game. Like, you were setting up a Bastion and that got Cosmo'd, and then a Nidavellir showed up and everything was going wrong in a matchup where it feels like you can't afford for everything to go wrong. And then you got that game to a 50-50. And I just want you to talk me through, because like, I was talking about this on commentary a little bit. People think that Red Skull instantly beats the deck. It's not just Red Skull, it's Red Skull and 13 power in 2 lanes, right? Like, it's that too. And talk me through how you win, or what you think about those matchups where you're not actually playing Cerebro, and what you can do about that kind of stuff.
I think the big thing is, okay, so in my opinion, when you're playing Snap, it's a game with a lot of known quantities. So on turn 3, when the 3rd location flips face up, at that point, you should be formulating your game plan for what turns 3, 4, 5, and 6 look like, because you have a decent amount of information about the cards in your hand. You have a good probability of the cards that you're going to draw from your deck, and you have at least information about what is in your opponent's deck in a tournament setting and what the locations are. So you should immediately be formulating a game plan from turn 3, right? That's step 1. So as soon as that is in, it's like, okay, this is my game plan A, and then you need a game plan B for if something goes wrong. And sometimes your game plan B is going to be, I'm going to retreat, right? If this happens, I'm going to retreat. But a lot of times what your game plan B should be is, okay, what am I doing if I only have 1 Cerebro effect? And then it's, what am I doing if I have 0 Cerebro effects? And when you're talking about 0 Cerebro effects, you're looking at, what is my opponent's maximum output in 2 lanes? Because a lot of the time they are nuking some amount of their game plan to turn you off of all Cerebro effects. They are taking the time to play cards that are overcosted for their tech ability, or they are siloing things into a singular lane. And that's just a game of math. You can figure out your opponent's maximum power output, and you can play to beat that. So I think one of the big things that makes people disrespect Cerebro in a lot of ways is they see it as a binary deck, which is, if I do Cerebro Mystique, I win and I beat everything. And if I don't do Cerebro Mystique, I lose to everything. And that's so far from the truth, because one, there's the representation of Cerebro Mystique, which is the
bluff snaps with this deck are immense. It's something Jay Walla is really, really good at, where it's just like, if you're playing against like a Cerebro deck and you're playing any kind of normal deck and they snap you, you just have to leave. Like you just can't.
Right,
You can't stay.
You have the power of representation, which is level 1, but it's also a good Cerebro player has the ability to find outs, whether it's a Bastion Luke Cage line, where you Bastion the demon that they gave you, and then you play the demon for 1 with a Luke Cage in play, and suddenly you have 2 6-power creatures in multiple lanes, and those are getting the Cerebro buffs, and you're able to play that way. So there are lines that beat a lot of the things that people are trying to do against you. There's hiding Cerebro behind Cosmo, or playing around Cosmic Ghost Rider. So I think that there is a lot of play to the deck of how do I win in situations where I don't do my thing, and being able to identify those spots is how you win. Like against Teebs in the finals, just the understanding of, okay, Teebs snapped me on an Isle of Silence, but their best interest is to Legion that Isle of Silence as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'm going to Scarlet Witch it. So if multiple turns pass by when the Isle of Silence has not been legioned, then it is in my best interest to assume that the Isle of Silence is essentially a 1-lane issue and not play around the Legion anymore, because it keeps us on an Arishem deck. The odds of them having the Legion is not high if they haven't played it during the window where they really needed to play it. And then the game entirely changes from that. So
yeah,
I think you just need to not flinch.
You did a lot of not flinching. That Legion thing was something that I noticed. I was just like, okay, that's happening. And then it just never happened, right? But there was the game against the Red Skull War Machine deck. There were multiple times where you were just like, if this happens, I'm losing. Like if they figure out what's going on here, and they probably will, I'm going to get got. That last one against the Infinite deck, where they played the Infinite on the left, you were dead if they had like a Red Skull Ebony Maw. That was it. That was the game, right?
Yeah.
And you just got to make that call, because what are you going to do? Retreat every time in case they have it?
Right. Like, the concept of bleeding out in Conquest is a big one. Yeah. Because when your matchup is bad, if you don't take a risky game that gives you a cube advantage, you're going to just bleed out. You're going to lose a cube, or if your opponent starts snapping you aggressively, 2 cubes at a time. And then you'll find yourself in a position where you have to win. Let's say you're down like a 4-8 deficit or something, and you have to win multiple perfect games where everything goes right for you against an unfavored matchup. But that's just not going to happen realistically, especially if your opponent is competent and knows what they're doing. Like, my opponent never revealed their Red Skull to me, right? Like, it was never an option for me to be like, I'm going to rogue the Red Skull.
Like, if the rogue wasn't in there, they would have been free. The only thing, like, just the threat of the rogue enabled you to win that matchup is the way I read that.
Right. They never revealed the Red Skull to me, but in never revealing the Red Skull to me, they also ensured that I had priority, which meant that I was ahead on the board most of the time, which gives me freedom to then contest 2 lanes. And that means that even if the Red Skull comes down, I have the power to win. So part of the mind game of that element is I created a new win condition for myself in order to be able to then take advantage of that avenue, because my opponent at level 1, and no disrespect to my opponent, they played well, but essentially the level 1 of what that matchup is I have Red Skull, they have Rogue, I need to not have priority. Yep. But at some point, you have to realize the game of not keeping priority also involves skipping out on plays and not playing the maximum power. And that plays into my advantage, right? Ultimately, if you Red Skull 1 lane, that's a lane I'm winning. You need to win the other 2 lanes. And if the Bar Sinister didn't keep showing up, that actually would have been more in my favor. Like, the Bar Sinister was very much not in my favor, allowing them to do it, and it happened twice in that match, which is already crazy. But it's the type of thing where once you know the matchup is bad, it just changes how you play the game. You play riskier. Again, I mentioned that match against Honifer where I went for 8 cubes in the first game, realizing every game they're going to have the Viper. I'm going to get Viper. That's going to happen. I need to find a win through it at some point. And if I can win 8 cubes, taking 2 more, that's almost trivial, right? One of these games will go my way. If I lose 8 cubes, I'm already losing the matchup that I was going to lose anyways. I'll try my best. It's over.
Yeah.
But you have to essentially gamble. You have to take the high risk place to set yourself up to win.
Before we jump into the card by card breakdown, there is just something I wanted to bring up because I mentioned this to Jerry and he was like, "Yeah, I know Monty from being like a hive mind one trick on Magic Online in like 2015 or whatever, right?" And it struck me that do you have is there like a brain affinity thing going on here? You've got hive mind, you've got Cerebro. Is that like something we should be like? Are you cognizant of this? Like, is that an intentional choice on your part, or is it just you gravitate towards that kind of thing?
It's definitely not an intentional choice, but it is a sort of like the meme aside, it is the similar idea of the game plan of I'm really drawn to decks that have a very linear primary game plan.
Extremely over the top, extremely straightforward. They're kind of the same
hive
deck.
mind,
like
Cerebro ad nauseum
yes.
for the Magic players. I played a lot of ad nauseum. It's decks that have a very linear game plan, but part of having a very linear game plan is they are also equally able to get taken advantage of through answers. So the decks that I like to play in that category are decks that I feel like give you a lot of agency in play when your opponents disrespect you as being just this linear deck. You do this one thing. If I answer your one thing, you can't win anymore. And it's like, well, no, I'm, not to sound fucking not humble about it, but I'm better than that, right? Like I'm coming into this with an understanding that you can beat my primary game plan, and I'm not just going to roll over and die. I have multiple game plans built and designed to play around this, and by being able to execute these game plans, I feel like I have a very powerful first thing and ways around it.
Be honest with me though, because I agree that all of this this stuff, these optimizations, these small percentages, turning these winnable games when you don't have Cerebro stuff happening, making sure that they happen. I agree all of that matters, especially at a high level. But what would you say it's doing to the deck? Like, let's say your win rate is 60%, right? Someone who isn't doing any of that and just playing linearly, what percentage are they getting chopped off there? Because I think what's really important about this stuff is it is crucially important because when you get to a high level, that stuff matters more. Those tiny percentages matter more. But I don't want someone watching this to be like, oh, I need to master this in order to comprehend playing this deck. Because I feel like Cerebro is a deck where it's like, if you just pick it up, you'll get like 90% of the way there.
Yeah. Hey, I don't think it's that drastic. I think at most it's maybe 5%. Like 5% is a lot in terms of win rate speaking, but like at most it's 5%. I think the big difference is just consistency. I think that the number of games that Cerebro in my hands feels like do or die, feast or famine versus someone else, I think is going to be the biggest difference. Is I feel like I am in maybe 90 to 95% of games. And I feel like without that experience, you may feel like, oh, I played 2 hours of Cerebro and I only really felt like I got to play half my games, right? The rest of the time, some bullshit happened and
it wasn't my fault.
I couldn't play.
It wasn't my fault.
It wasn't my fault.
It wasn't my fault.
There was nothing I could do. Right? And that's I think that is the mindset of a lot of people when they look at not just Cerebro, but a lot of this type of deck is, and when I say this type of deck, the other deck that I played the most of in this game is Patriot. Same concept, same idea, just different shell. Right? The idea is the same, just a different shell. And it's about, okay, how do I play the hand that is dealt to me?
Moving on to the card-by-card breakdown. Now, the list you ended up playing was Jay Walla's. I do kind of want to know what he told you to convince you, because I feel like I wasn't able to convince you to, like, not run Jennifer Kale or whatever. I was trying, but I don't think I got there. And it's like, yeah, all right, sure. And then I talked about it in my Discord, and Jay Walla was like, Cam, you can't let him do this. You have to stop him from doing this. And then I got a message from him later that was like, I reached out to Mani. He's not doing this. It was just like, I don't know how he found you. I don't know any of it.
I reached out to him. I will say.
Okay.
I'm going to take some ownership on that. I reached out to him, and I feel like I messaged him blind. So like it took a while. He didn't respond. And I sent a clarifying message like, by the way, KM told me, and I'd like to pick your thoughts on this. So I reached out to him, and then we had a little chat about it. But yeah, essentially it was things that I already at least partially knew. Like the concept of Lockjaw more or less only enabling cope staying, right?
Yes.
Because the idea of Lockjaw is, okay, you have an extra way to find Cerebro in the games when you're not drawing it. But in an average game where you are drawing the right amount of cards, you're drawing 9 cards of your deck. So if you haven't drawn Cerebro, that's a 1 in 3 for it to be pulled out by Lockjaw. Those aren't good odds, right? Like there are matchups like, for example, Red Skull or Viper, where I would take those odds, but most of the time you should be retreating. That is the concept of the cope state, is staying in for X amount of cubes to have a 1 in 3 to hit Cerebro is not good odds. So Lockjaw gives you this illusion of I can dig a card deeper, but it's never going to be consistent unless the locations are already playing in a way like you have Nova Roma and you've drawn 2 extra cards and you just happen to be the unlucky soul that has Cerebro as the only card left in your deck.
Nothing I could do.
You don't,
by the way.
Yeah. Nothing you could do. You don't build your deck around those situations. And I think that was the biggest thing that I needed to hear was I could really get into a mindset of the times when the cope hits, the times when the Valkyrie is amazing, the times when the curve works out perfectly, when the Lockjaw hits, the Cerebro, all of those things feel great. And when you're playing a series of irrelevant games, for lack of a better term, on ladder, which is how I was sort of doing my preparation on that day, is you really tend to remember the highs and not the moments when things sort of fall apart. And I think that is a fallacy brain that a lot of gamers are very prone to, is the things that are working feel really good. And, my win percentage was still good. Like, I think in that day when I played my list from like 90 to 100, I think my win rate was like 63% or something playing my version of the deck. That feels great, but it's not the right way of looking at things when it comes to tournament preparation. What my goal is in a tournament is consistency. So as I'm talking to Jay Walla, I am having my biases challenged. And I'm thinking about my games and thinking about the number of times where I didn't have a turn 2 play because I didn't have Sentinel. I didn't have enough power because my Luke Cage was 2 power instead of 3 because of Bast. I didn't have things play out on curve because I had a Valkyrie in my hand. And all of those times, the times when I stayed in and I lost cubes because I went for a cope Lockjaw win, all of those times sort of flashed in front of me. And I'm like, I'm not going to say I try-harded this tournament. I picked my deck a day and a half before, but I cared about doing well. I wanted to do well in the tournament, just in a realistic sense of what my capabilities, what my strengths, what my weaknesses, and what my limits are. So when thinking about it, it's like, okay, I would be doing a disservice to myself by trying to bring an almost high rolly version of the deck that when it works, it's great, but it's not going to have the same high floor that I'm looking for. It's going to be a lot more feast or famine, which is ironically how a lot of people see Cerebro. It's like my build of the deck was almost playing into the same things that people write off Cerebro as a consistent deck for.
And so Bast came back in as a floor raiser, right? Because this was one of the cards that you wanted to cut.
Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't feel that exciting because you normally have the power to do things without it, especially with Bastion now. But it does just make things a little more consistent. Just the difference between a 2-power Luke Cage and a 3-power Luke Cage is sort of everything. Like, one of the things is I think that earlier on when I was playing the deck, I was trying to high roll a bit too much in like the modern versions of the deck without realizing that with Macari, with Umbaku, and with Bastion, you don't really need to high roll anymore. You can just set up so much power in so many situations. So like greeting a Bast to try to hit 2 cards versus just firing it off to hit 1 is just unnecessary. And by adjusting those thought patterns and looking at the deck sort of in a modern way, because again, I hadn't played this version of Cerebro 3. I never played with Bastion before. I hadn't seen what the deck currently is capable of. My latest Cerebro experience was Cerebro 2 a month and a bit ago before some of the nerfs affected it. So it's like, okay, I have to update what I feel like Cerebro 3's output is, what its weaknesses are, what its strengths are, and in doing so, my evaluations of some cards changed. I still don't think Bast is integral to the deck. I think you can build a version of the deck that doesn't have Bast in it, and you're not losing that much. And I think that's true about a decent number of the cards in the deck, is they are replaceable, but Bast does good things for its spot.
Let's talk about our boy. I have there's like the macro question and the micro question here. I'm gonna ask the micro question first. The micro question is, right, in that final game, did you purposefully leave space for Umbaku?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I was like, why isn't he playing the Sentinel with that Luke Cage? And it was like, oh, I get it. As soon as he jumped out of the deck, I was like...
Yeah. If I don't draw Cerebro there, I'm retreating.
Yes.
And the only way Umbaku is not in my deck is if I don't draw Cerebro. So the way that the game concludes is I draw Cerebro, I stay in, and then Umbaku fills that spot. So by playing a Sentinel, I'm just it's not even just Umbaku value of where it comes out. It's I'm limiting my choices of space. Whatever space the Sentinel I'm playing that previous turn is taking, like the non-meme answer is whatever space that Sentinel is in is a locked space of this is a Sentinel. Whereas if that doesn't exist, I have more choices for where my 2 plays are being played out, and then the Umbaku fills in that last spot.
This guy is actually just quite good at this deck. Like, in as much as it's like, oh, haha, the Umbaku bit, this deck just cares about having a 1/3. Like, that's just an important thing to have.
The floor is a Cerebro card, right? When you're thinking about this deck, every card at its floor is an X3, and what your goal is to do is your goal is to fill in the curve. Your goal is every turn when possible, you are developing a 3-power creature for the mana that you have, which is why Sentinel is so important, because it allows you to fill in multiple spots on the curve with one card.
Incredibly magic pilled, by the way. Creature, mana, just not even...
Yeah. Right. You have 12
Yes.
You have 12 spots to fill on the board. Your goal at the end of the game is to have filled all 12 spots with ideally 12 cards that have 3 power. Sometimes it's going to be 10, sometimes it's going to be 9. The ceiling is 12, right? That when you can do that, that's the dream. But every turn you want to be developing things. So the floor is 3-power creature, right? And to curve out, to not get stuck with turns where your mana is awkward, you need things at different costs. You need the 1-drops, you need the 2-drops, you need to be able to play in a way where you can layer your turns, where you're taking advantage of your mana efficiency and maximizing. So Umbaku is a 1-3, but when you don't draw it, it's insane, right?
It's a free 1-3.
Right. Like,
Noted.
the ceiling of the card is it's a free 1-3 that you didn't draw. Like, you're a whole card up on your opponent. Like, if we just think about, like, I'm gonna go way back, and this isn't going to be a comparable argument, but I'm gonna go back to original America Chavez, which was for a large chunk. Like, the reason initial America Chavez was broken was because you are taking a card out of the equation for the majority of the game. And you are saying that I have a better likelihood of setting up my game plan and curving because my deck is a card smaller until the turn that doesn't matter, right? This is the same concept almost flipped, in that when you draw it, it's fine. It's a card that you want in your deck for what it does. It's cheap and it has 3 power. When you don't draw it, you are an entire card up on your opponent. Like, if you think about the number of cards in the game of Marvel Snap that have the word draw card on it, like, the lengths you have to go through to draw an extra card in this game is incredible. And this is a card that you are drawing and putting into play for free. It's the ceiling is insane.
I bought this variant, I want to say 2 years ago, and I will finally have cause to actually use it.
Yeah.
I feel like Jeff is a similar floor ceiling thing here, where it's just like X3 has text that is relevant occasionally. That's kind of the end of it, right? Like, that's the case for Jeff in almost everything. This is one of the few decks that actually cares about him being an X3, where he hasn't been power crept by some sort of arcane BS that has happened in the more recent seasons.
Yeah, I think Jeff is currently, at its least necessary in the deck. There was a long period of time where Jeff was the only way you were combating things like Sanctum Sanctorum. If a Sanctum came down, you had to have Jeff to contest it in any way. Now you have Umbaku sometimes, you have Macari sometimes, you have ways to abuse Macari with Bastion getting a second copy. So there are ways to do those things that don't require Jeff. So I think that this is the time when Jeff is the least mandatory in the deck. And now it's just, this is the best of the cards that you could put in the slot. But ultimately, it's just a cheap low guy. Like, that's what it is. It's a cheap low guy. You could have a Ghost Spider in the spot that gives you the same sort of, it's cheap, it has 3 power, you can do some location shenanigans to play around like the clog stuff. One upside to Jeff is it gives you a little extra game if your like Legion Storm combo opponent, the War Machine deck, does their thing. You have one extra bit of thing if you've set up already a bit before it, but you're already pretty good against that matchup, so you don't need it exactly. But it's like, it's just a cheap little guy with some utility. It's a card that I was ready to cut from the deck. It's a card that I still think if you don't have it, you don't need to be like, I need Jeff to play this deck. I think that a lot of the card spots, once you understand the service that card is providing, the role that card is serving, you can make 1-for-1 swaps for most of the cards in this deck. You know, like, if I had to say what is core, it's Cerebro, Mystique, Luke Cage, Cosmo. That's it. Cosmo is just...
I would argue with you with this card here.
You need some form of location interaction. Scarlet Witch is the best one, but like, if for some reason you didn't have Scarlet Witch and you're like, I have to run Magic, I'd be like, okay, run Magic. Sure. It's worse, but like,
yeah, run Magic,
right? It's just like, Scarlet Witch is the best one for what it does, which is, it's a bad effect. You are gambling, and sometimes you're still going to lose to your Scarlet Witch.
That game,
but it is
the game where they red skulled on your Cerebro lane that had been Bastion to make it 90 power, and you Scarlet Witched a different lane, and it turned into Nidavellir, which in any other circumstance would screw you over so hard.
Yeah.
That was awesome. That was great. That was great.
Right. Like, it's a bad card, but it does what it does. You know, if we go back a year and a half before the change, I was running Rhino instead of Scarlet Witch.
I was going to ask, would you play old Rhino over her?
Yeah, I would change my curve a bit if I can. I think that currently, like, Scarlet Witch isn't a 2 anyways. Like, the flexibility of playing it plus 2 cards from Bastion on the 6th turn is real, but I think there are versions of the deck you could change around where you get to play Old Rhino as a 3/3 that just destroys a location, and you just lose the downside of losing to the Scarlet Witch. Again, it requires you to tweak the numbers of it, but it's better. It's definitely better.
This is going to be my other quibble for, like, there are no other core cards. Because this guy, when I first started playing Marvel Snap, this guy was instant. Like, you get him and you're just like, oh my God, this card is broken. It's Squadron Hawk. They put Squadron Hawk in Marvel Snap. It's amazing. I'm going to play Squad. It's broken. Yeah. There is not a single deck that can use it that is not Cerebro 3. Like,
right.
That is where we're at with Sentinel. But he is quite good.
Yeah. It is exactly what you need it to be, which is it fills the spot in the curve and in future curves, right? It's a 2-drop that you draw, and then on turn 3 you can play Sentinel plus Bast or Sentinel plus Umbaku. On turn 4 you can go Sentinel plus Scarlet Witch if you need to attack a location because you've seen all the locations at that point. It every turn it just fills the spot that you need it to, and it means that you never run out of things to play. So it's purely serving a role, but it's an important role, which is ensure you get enough power. There were old iterations of the deck where I was playing Crystal plus Magic to ensure that I was going later into the game. And then I wanted cards that had more impact than Sentinel, because with the extra cards and with the extra turn, I want all of my cards to have effects. I want them to be cards. Just giving me more cards to play wasn't good enough anymore. But in the current iteration of the deck and in the metagame that we're attacking, Sentinel is perfect at what it does.
Anything you got to say about this guy that you haven't already said?
I love this card. If we like this, we're not anywhere on this level, but if there was you win the Marvel Snap World Championship, you get a variant of a card with you in it or whatever. Like, if that was a thing that existed, I would love for mine to just be me wearing Cerebro. Like it's not even just because I played it. It's just a card that has sentimental value to me. I think that it's cool because I personally believe that it's an incredibly fair card. I think that when a card has this much counterplay to it, like, I think you can tweak the numbers. Absolutely. I think that if it went back to being 2 cost, 2 power, that's fine. Maybe as the current state of the game is, because metagames and cards need to change to what things at large are. That's kind of the concept of power creep, is like, you need to have the card be playable relative to what the current state of Marvel Snap is. But maybe it's too powerful and you nerf it. But I think conceptually, it's a card that has many, many answers to it. It's a card that is fragile, and I don't think it's ever going to dominate the game. I think that it's just, there's too much going against it. There's too many ways that people can adapt for little cost to beat it. And it's not Hela, it's not, oh, if I don't get Eliath or Cosmo in the right lane, I'm dead every time, right? There's so much going against it.
I think
that's my opinion. I'm a little biased.
I think it kind of is, and I'm going to skip one ahead to talk about why I think it kind of is.
Okay.
This guy's kind of like when you see a deck with Cerebro, you're like, what makes this fair? Oh, I can make my opponent's cards not have that power anymore. That would be the natural kind of counterplay that you would do to something that has the tech Cerebro has. And Luke Cage is just like, hey man, don't even try. Like, don't even. Not only are you stupid for thinking that would work, I beat your deck on my own. Like that.
Remember when Luke Cage got moved up to 4 power? That was a dark time for Cerebro gamers.
I think
remember.
they should move him up to 5 at this point. That's the only one that's bad enough for him to be at.
I think the first time I stopped playing Cerebro 3 was when Luke Cage went from 3-3 or 3-2 to 3-4, and I'm like, all right, well, back it up. There's nothing we can do about this one. We're done. Let's take a Cerebro break. Is Cerebro 4 viable? No. All right, we're done. We're going on hiatus, folks.
He really does bulletproof the deck against, like, because, like, when you read Cerebro, if you're a new player, you can reasonably look at that and be like, oh, I get it. This is how it's fragile. I make them have less power. No, you have to make them have more power. What cards can do that? One card in the game. You gotta, he covers a lot of ground here.
Right. There's definitely tools like Red Guardian, Enchantress, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Eliath. Like, the existence of these cards force you to adapt, and if your opponent doesn't have multiples, then they're still in a bad spot. But it is a deck that is interactable with, which is why I say that it's not like Hela. It is interactable with, but it's still powerful. I'm not going to deny that it's a good deck. It's more fragile.
I'm going to skip ahead to the other thing that's like, hey, actually screw off all those other cards. Again, we'll go back to Mystique in a second. But yeah, like, there's a reason you mentioned these two cards as the core cards alongside Cerebro Mystique. And it's because without them, you actually are vulnerable to all this stuff. But with them, you are probably the least vulnerable of any combo deck that isn't Hela, right? And actually, post Stardust, I don't even know if that's true of Hela. Like, of any combo deck, this is the one that has the most built-in, actually, you don't have counterplay to what it's trying to do. Like, there's even counterplay to Red Skull with Rogue in here. Like, it's quite well put together, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Like, it has a lot of ability to protect itself. A lot of counter spells in your combo deck.
Yeah. I think Cosmo is kind of a messed up card in general. I think the fact that it both, to date myself, it both attack and protect. Like, Cosmo kind of does everything here in that it's not only really good against other game plans and what they're trying to do, but it also protects your creatures. It really is the full package of, this is the dream. This is the rug that brings the whole room together. It's like, you need Cosmo and Luke to feel like you are safe. And yeah, that's a 4-card combo of, you need to assemble these in the right order, in the right places, in the right timing, because, a Cosmo on turn 6 isn't going to protect anything, right? So you need the Cosmo set up preemptively. Like, it asks a lot of steps from you, but when you accomplish those steps, you feel indestructible. You feel like, oh, there's nothing you can do. Like, I've won this game. Why aren't you retreating, etc.
Yeah, that's sort of the dynamic that I think it shares with Hela, where it's like,
yeah,
I like, because it's not very stringent about when this stuff has to happen, other than before you play the Cerebro in the lane the Cosmo's in, right? Luke Cage can do it all retroactively, because don't get me started on that guy. But like, Cosmo is like, it's really just asking, like, play Cosmo in some lane, play Cerebro in that lane. And that's the kind of stuff that, like, I think is what sets this deck apart. And it's also, for the record, kind of what sets Move apart, right? As a deck that gets to naturally include these answers to the answers people have to it without stressing its main game plan, because the main game plan generates so many free points that it's, like, not a big deal to play a 3/3. I think that a lot of the time when Cosmo is a popular card, currently, it's filling the role Eliath used to fill mostly, where it's like, this is supposed to be like a tech card or whatever. What it's actually doing is shutting down people trying to answer you. It's slamming the door. It's what's the counter spell where you lose the game the next turn, but it doesn't matter because you won the game? Force of Negation? Pact of Negation. That.
Pact of Negation.
Yes.
I've played a fair share of Pact of Negations.
That's
as a
Hive Mind gamer. Like, you can see the through lines here. But yeah, like, that's kind of what's going on with this guy. It's just like, well, it would really be a shame if you could do something about this, but you can't. Sorry.
I think there's a very fair argument to be made that Cosmo is like in metagames where Cosmo is good, it's oppressively good. It
Yeah.
does too much for the package, the body, the size, everything. I don't know how you fix it. I'm not a game designer. I'm not attacking things from that angle, but it is oppressively good.
Right, like in as much as there is something that makes Cerebro oppressive, it's not just the points. The points are good enough to allow for Cosmo Luke Cage to make you bulletproof.
Right.
And exactly. That's the thing that like that's the big thrust of the deck.
Yeah.
Now we're going back to just boring old Mystique who reads double your stuff. I actually kind of want to know, would you consider replacing her with Chameleon? Are you familiar with Chameleon? No? Totally out? Okay. Chameleon
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Chameleon is a 3/3s coming out, I think, today, actually.
Okay.
When we're recording, and is the day that this will come out. He says, copy the text of a card that revealed here this turn. So if you're playing Cerebro Chameleon, he has a natural 3 power, but he requires you to play them in the same lane. You're out on that? You think Mystique is just way better? Okay.
It makes you too linear. It makes it so you have to do that on turn 6, right? Or you have to have played Cerebro and Bastioned it earlier on in order to then set up for turn 5 or 6 that. It also, I think one of the underrated abilities of this deck has always been the ability to switch the flip and almost play a little bit of a lockdown role by going Cosmo, Mystique the Cosmo in 2 different lanes and just shutting off your opponent's ability to enact their game plan or interact. And I think losing that sort of flexibility by taking away Mystique is too costly.
Would you consider getting him into this deck in some other way? Anything stand out as like, is that an effect you want, or do you even feel like it's necessary? Because it's definitely worse than Bastion.
Right. I think it's possible. I think anything that the less your turns are scripted, the stronger you're going to be. Because when a turn is scripted, that means your opponent can play around it, right? So the less your turns are scripted in any way, the better things will be. Now, that means it's worse than Bastion, but is there a spot for it in the deck? Who knows? I don't know if I would be able to fit it into this list. Maybe it's better than Rogue, but probably not, because Rogue is an attack card, right? It depends on, is my goal to go higher or is my goal to protect? And right now, because of the nature of the metagame, I don't need to go higher. I don't need to. The amount of power that this Cerebro deck in the current metagame puts out is enough to beat most things. That you can beat Infinauts with this deck pretty trivially, right? So it's like, okay, I need flexibility. I need options. I need to be able to do my thing. And I need my opponent not to be able to assume what my thing is going to be at any given point.
How crucial would you say Macari is to this gameplay? Because we talked about how amazing Umbaku can be. Macari is just that all the time here, it feels like.
I think this card is busted, personally. I think it's busted specifically in this deck. I think it would be busted in a world where Surfer is playable, which is not the one we currently live in. Or
getting kind of ceiling out right now, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the amount of... When I'm playing Cerebro and I'm looking at Surfer players, it's like, okay, we're not existing in the same world, right? You are not matching me in terms of what we're doing. But I think the card is busted. I think it's random location at basically any point of the game is more or less irrelevant, because earlier on it just goes somewhere and then you formulate your game plan around it. Later on, you can fill locations and essentially sculpt the path for Macari to land somewhere, and the rest of it is it's just free. Like it's free. It's free with Bastion. It's free. And I think that's, it's broken not in the you need to nerf Macari sense, because it's not going into every deck. It's broken in the what this card does is unique and uniquely powerful. And there's no like when I listed the four cards that I think are core to Cerebro, I actually like even more than Sentinel in terms of what I think the next most important card to have is Macari, because it just all of the I get to fill curves with Sentinels. Having a free card that you can clone with a Bastion does a good job of filling curves. I think it's just a pretty key card to the deck.
It's your I was thinking of Magic analogies because we're both Magic boomers. Like I was thinking Memnite, but then I was like, no, this is your artifact land. That's what this is. This is your artifact land where it's just like, it's free. I get it for free. It just does something that's good for me. And, okay, my opponent might be able to target it with Shatter or whatever, right? Yeah. It might screw me over in where it goes. That could happen, but it's free. I'm playing it.
Right. There is basically zero cost to playing this card in your deck, and it's all upside.
Late edition Rogue ended up being crucial for you. Like, the way in which this forced your absolute worst matchup to become, I don't know, ballparking 40% instead of 0% was astonishing to watch.
Yeah, its existence alone changed that matchup and made it winnable. It allowed me to play the games in a different way, and it also forced my opponent to play the games in a different way, a way that I don't think they were immediately ready to play. I think that if you give me the same matchup with the same opponent who's had an hour or 3 hours or a day to think about what is the realistic implications of the card in the matchup and how I have to play, that matchup might go very differently for me. But the fact that it was almost an unexpected factor really just flipped things around. I think the ability to attack War Machine decks came up a few times for me in the rounds of the Swiss. Like
the Legion
you
stuff,
played a War Machine, I played a Rogue, I take your ability. You just lock down the game, and I'm the one that can play anywhere. It does a lot that is very unique for what the effect is. I think that if you tell me that I could run Red Guardian in the spot instead, Red Guardian was a 3/3, I probably would. But there would be times where it would be more universally better, but there are times where it would still be worse. So it's still a unique effect, right? I think it's a card that does something that no other card in that spot can do. And for at least your probably second worst card in the field, I think Viper is actually more of an issue than Red Skull is, personally. I think both are pretty close to unbeatable, but Viper is... Red Skull essentially gives you one lane win, and I don't think that's true about Viper.
Yeah.
So it's like, you have to work for your win harder if your opponent Vipers you. But either way, I think Rogue is a card that it was integral to my win specifically because of that one matchup. But it's also, its existence just changes the dynamic of games, which is good.
Talk to me about how absolutely goated this man is.
It's strong. It's not broken, but it's really good. It raises your ceiling, right? That's the biggest thing, is when you're thinking about numbers, it's okay. If you take Bastion out of the deck, your Cerebro deck's ceiling is 9 power cards, so 36 in the lane, right? And that's enough to beat most people, but some decks that is not enough. But if you Bastion a Cerebro and a Mystique, you are raising that ceiling to 15 a card, and suddenly your max cap is 60 in a lane. But more importantly, it takes less cards. You don't need 60 in a lane, but it takes less cards, which means you can contest more lanes with the same amount of cards by splitting things around, where suddenly the possibility of having 3 40 power lanes rather than 2 32 power lanes becomes very real. And that's not a game you're going to lose. That's ignoring what it does in terms of fixing curves. Again, if you just play a Bastion, you don't run that many 2-drops in this deck. But if you play a Bastion on turn 4, you guaranteed have a 2+3 because of the sheer number of threes that you run for turn 4, for turn 5, and then turn 6, you can go 1, 2, 3, you can go 2, 2, 2. There's options for you. There's duplicates of Luke Cage. There was the one game against Thebes where I used Bastion to make a duplicate Luke Cage because I needed Luke Cage to win that specific game against their Spider-Punk. And it's like, okay, by me making this clone, I'm saying that if you Cosmic Ghost Rider, if you Enchantress, the first one, I have a second one, I'm set up to beat you still. And that's a unique effect because you don't really want to be mistaking Luke Cage. That's losing too much power. But Bastioning an extra Luke Cage, that's completely fine. And that's ignoring all of the like Bastion, get a big creature, use Luke Cage to set his power to big and fight weird things. Like it just does so much for such a clean package.
Yeah, like
does everything.
Monster Island, if you Bastion that card, right?
Yeah.
And then you Luke Cage it, that's another 10. It's not something
that's
you want to be doing, but it's good. But like it's functional, right? Like you can win games.
You no longer have to auto retreat on Monster Island. You have a 2/10 that if you have Cerebro Mystique out, you have 2 16 power creatures, right? In 2 lanes.
16 power in a row.
It doesn't take much more to supplement them with a few 3 power, for lack of a better term, shitters to really just be able to win the lane.
That's a bit of language that I wish we had really imported better, because I miss calling just like every guy with 3 or less power a shitter. It's just like a nice thing. Like you just decks would be like mono white shitters. It's like we never imported that language over to Marvel Snap. I wish we had, but I understand why it didn't actually map 1-to-1.
It's a more wholesome community.
A little bit, yeah.
It can be.
This is the longest one of these we've ever done. So, first of all, I want to check in and make sure you're good on time.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I want to know if you have any final advice for anyone who's picking up this deck. Anyone you want to just like what if someone, let's say, maybe they have the same relationship with the game as you. Maybe they're like someone who used to compete in other card games. Maybe they're someone who wants to learn how to compete now. For me, what stuck out was stop instantly giving up when you don't do your thing. That felt like number 1. But I feel like we've covered that. So I want to know if there's like level 2. What's a little bit deeper than that for how we play this deck?
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I've said this in another interview. I'm going to say this, and this is not going to just apply to this deck, but it definitely applies to this deck. You need to learn to lose. Like that is just eternal advice for competing at anything is you need to learn to lose without it shattering your mental. In any card game where there's some level of variance, you're not going to have an absurd win rate. You are going to win, at best, slightly more than you are losing. That's the nature of card games. And if you don't learn to lose, then the losses will always hit you harder than the wins will, and it will create just an unsustainable mental environment because you can never capture a consistent and stable mental state. You will just always be on an emotional roller coaster where the losses will hit you. And that's more true about Cerebro than any other deck because you're going to lose games. As much as I say, look, 90% of games 90% of games are playable. 90% of games you can fight and find an avenue to victory. But there's still 10% where you're being handed a GG and you cannot let that crush you, right? You need to be like, all right, go next. I think that's something that is both great and negative about Marvel Snap is the pace of games and how quickly they go. Is you get, on the one hand, the positive is, okay, you play a ladder game, it's over, you immediately queue up another, and it's gone. But at the same time, because you're able to do that, there's no moment of sitting for a moment with your emotions and just processing the loss or thinking about what you did wrong, thinking about how you could have played it differently. It's just, okay, that's gone. I'm queuing up again. I'm doing another, and that's out of my mind because you don't want to take the time to sit with the loss. The loss is a negative feeling. The sooner you move past that, the sooner you can chase the high of a positive feeling. But by learning to lose properly, which is every loss means something. That something can be there was nothing I could do, but every loss still means something. And if you can learn to lose, that will ultimately lead to more winning. So it's I'm oversimplifying a pretty complicated concept of how to manage the relationship between losing and winning in an endeavor that is inherently variance based, but you have to learn to lose to be able to compete and play the game happily for a reasonable amount of time.
Feels like targeted in a way.
It's not, I swear. It's not.
It feels like I walked into like, okay, we did like, an hour. We're doing goofs and gaffs. We're talking about the deck. You just hit me with like a baseball bat of like, yeah, you're right. That is something I need to do. Oh, yeah. Yep. You're 100% right. Yep. I just like, it feels like I just walked into a therapy session in the last 5 minutes of this video.
It's just you and me one-on-one, and then there's a point where I just pull a curtain and your friends or family are there. It's like, this is an intervention. Surprise, motherfucker. Gotcha.
God.
No, like,
if my family knew, oh my God. Lord above, I hope they don't know I stream.
I think this is something that like I would say to every single, like, not just in Snap, I would say to Magic players as well. I think that the biggest difference that I see between successful competitors and those that are chasing that success is how their relationship with losing is. And this isn't to say like enjoy losing. Like, losing should still be like it's never going to feel good, but you need to learn how to process it. And I think anyone that can do that will find themselves inherently more successful in competition.
Genuinely an inspiring bit. Like, I'm making jokes about it because it makes me a little bit uncomfortable to have someone touch on something that is such a clear flaw of mine, right? Like, obviously, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just being as honest as I can. It's like that is uncomfortable for me to hear about, like, the ways in which I set up for my own failure, right? That's hard to deal with. And I appreciate it because I think it gives, like, of all of the times I've had similar conversations, I feel like this is one that it is put in terms that feel a bit like they drilled in a way that maybe other types of this conversation have. And I really appreciate that because I think that it is an incredibly important lesson to learn. And it's one that I have always known academically, but there's a difference between knowing it and feeling or actualizing it, the way you approach things.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I'm saying this from a place of experience where, like, 10 years ago, like 2015, there was a very clear moment for me where the toll of losing and not being able to handle that well sort of snapped me, and I just quit competition altogether. I was like, I can't do this. I'm done. I'm out. And it was a process of learning to sort of rebuild my mental and rebuild that in order to get to a point where I feel comfortable competing in a healthy way and also just being able to say that and genuinely mean it rather than feeling like I am spouting off things that I've heard from other people about the right way to do things. It's like I went on my own journey of experiencing the highs and lows and understanding having an unhealthy relationship with competition because I'm an inherently competitive person. That's a lot of us are. That's why we exist in the space. That's why we thrive, is because we like competition. But competition is by nature unhealthy because it is elevating a state of adrenaline that is unsustainable, almost like chasing a drug. And it's very hard to replicate. So you become addicted to the thrill of competition, and then you feel the highs and you feel the lows. But when you're doing it in something that is variance based, you don't have control of those highs and lows. So you need to turn the control inwards to how you react to them. Like I said, I am oversimplifying a very complicated concept.
I don't think you are. Like, when I hear what you're saying, I'm just like, that's really smart. Like, I'm just like, oh yeah, that is really good advice. Okay, I gotta get better at this, because at a certain point, it's just like I Lord knows I've gone through various periods of like snap rebound. I'm like a rubber band like that, right? I am struck by this, where it's like, you have put it in a very succinct way, and a way that I am going to try and endeavor to internalize. And obviously, we'll see how that goes. I've tried this before, but we'll see how things end up happening.
It takes time.
You. Just like genuinely, thank you. Is really kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, this was
you have
like
to be patient with yourself. Everyone does. You have to be patient with yourself and just strive to internalize it as you can.
That is. We got really deep for a deck guide video. I feel like, it's like,
That's my bad.
No, it goes back to the brain thing, right? You got Cerebro, you got Hive Mind. Now we're doing therapy, but I won't push this any further than I have to. Do you have any shout outs you want to give on the back end? Anything you want to say to the viewers? Anything you want to plug about where you are at? I mean, I know you reached out to the Golden Gauntlet people as like, hey, I'm a professional caster. I'd love to do some casting. And I'd be shocked if they say no, because to me, you are better at that job than I am, and I do that job. So I think that's sort of how I look at this.
I appreciate it. I got nothing to plug. You can find me on Magic the Gathering broadcasts on the official Wizards channel. But really, I want to shout out yourself and Jay Walla for just the support that you gave me. It was really integral to just be able to challenge my own biases, and without the pairing of you two putting things together in a way that I was able to understand, because it's really hard to break through concepts that you have cemented in your mind as good things. So to have someone be able to do that is difficult. And that's why it's just a huge shout out to you guys for really helping push me in the right direction. And the rest of it was some amount of luck. I'm going to be honest. I think I played the tournament really well for the most part.
I also think you played it really well. Like, it was like,
yeah.
Like, it was notable. Like, people were just like, man, he is not making a mistake. He's just he's playing incredibly cleanly right now. Yeah.
Like, there was one round, my semifinals against Moved, where I had somebody come to my door to drop something off, and I had to step away from the computer in the middle of the game. And that messed up my mental for that game. And that was the game that I actually last second changed the rogue location and then lost because of it. It was like, I still hadn't fully recovered. My mind was racing to try to catch up in terms of, okay, all of this is happening. Let's reabsorb it and get in the mindset. And it just didn't work. But outside of that brief window, I think I played the tournament really well. And I'm happy with that. But I also got incredibly lucky. I set myself up to get lucky. Part of it was just understanding the patterns of how my opponents were playing. You know what? I'm going to shout out one thing. I'm going to shout out Conquest mode. People need to play more Conquest. You want to do good in competition, you got to play more Conquest. It's such a different game from Ladder. My ladder playing is I hit Infinite, I stop playing Ladder. The rest of the month, I play the events they put out there, and I just play Conquest every day. And I think that makes a big difference.
When you say it's a different game from Ladder, I have this pet theory that the metagame is functionally the same. Like, the decks you're going to see, those are functionally the same. And that's usually the context in which I say Ladder and Conquest are not meaningfully different, because what I'm trying to do when I say that is I'm fighting against, the idea that you need, people ask me, oh, does this deck work in Conquest? Yes, dude. Yes, it does. If it works on Ladder, it'll work in Conquest. What's different is the micro, correct?
it's the micro. You need success in Conquest requires you to understand your opponent well, because you are playing against the same opponent for multiple games in a row. This is something that, playing at high infinite ladder where you can play against the same person, let's say 3 times in an hour in broken games, is cool, but you don't get that experience of, this is my opponent's snapping patterns. These are the things they're snapping on. They're too passive, so I play aggressively. They're too aggro, so I play passively. This is their idea of what a winning hand is. So this is what they're trying to push on. These are things that in Conquest you become more attuned to. And by becoming more attuned to it, you can pick it up faster in a tournament setting. Whereas you can know what your opponent's deck does all you want. That is great for the core understanding of the game. But Conquest is also a battle of endurance, knowing which matchups you need a cube lead in, and what kind of lead you need, right? Because there are matchups where if you can build a 4-cube lead early, you can just force your opponent to bleed out, and they will have to adapt in an unconventional way in order to not bleed out.
Give me an
right?
example of a matchup like that. I'm just assuming it's just like Cerebro versus whatever mid-range deck is one of those where you just
Cerebro
you get
versus
ahead
Airship. Cerebro versus Airship is like Teebs' deck is not consistently going to draw its answers to Cerebro. What Airship does well is with the extra energy, it gets to go over top of you. But it's not going over top of you if you're Cerebro. So they are chasing the perfect series of cards where the locations work in their favor and they have the right tech cards drawn in their massive deck in order to be able to combat me. Any deck that they don't find that, they are bleeding out cubes. Now, Teebs is an aggressive player, so rather than seeing that dynamic happen, we saw the finals go 4-4-2, done. But against a more passive player, that finals might go 4-1-1-1. We're in high stakes, 2-2-1, done. I might lose one of it, but as soon as I get that first lead, I don't need to try to go for any big cube wins anymore, because the majority of the games I'm going to win. I just need to continue pushing them back while their back is against the wall. And then they can never 8-cube me because I'm too far ahead because of the nature of Conquest. And you can't replicate that on ladder. So being able to get the core gameplay of Conquest down is a tournament skill, and I don't think you can get that by exclusively playing ladder. So that's my big tip: is playing more Conquest.
That last bit you said about they can't 8-cube me, specifically in relation to RSM, because a lot of what we talk about with RSM is, on the broadcast I was referring to it as like victory via clip farming. There's just a million matchups where that deck only wins if they clip farm you. Like, only if they're like, oh, I generated a Quake and it was a Nexus game, right? Like that kind of stuff is what they need to happen. And if you can prevent that from costing you 8, if you can win some of those early games and establish that lead, then they get less equity out of their clip farming. Those first few games are where that matchup lies, because I saw this happen to the person who played against RSM with the zombie deck, right? They got down early. They lost a 4-cuber. They lost a 4-cuber. And then it was like, well, we don't even have to get lucky here anymore for the RSM gamer. Yeah. It just happens. It's going to happen. I'm going to clip farm you at least once in 5 games.
And also, like, the other side of that as well is, can you win both mentally and in terms of game plan if you get 8-cubed on the first round? Like, in a tournament setting, because, like, a lot of people, when they play Conquest normally, if they get 8 cubes in the first round, they just leave. They're like, I'm fucking over this. I don't want to grind this out in battle, and I'm done. But you're never doing that at a tournament. You're not giving up your tournament life. So do you have the rep experience to come back 2 cubes at a time? Do you have the rep experience to know you get 1 retreat in that spot, right? If you've gotten 8 cubes, you get 1 retreat in the next 3 rounds. Do you have the experience to know when you have to use that 1 retreat well? Like, do you know when you have to snap to force your opponent to use their retreat? There's a lot of things that happen in Conquest that cannot exist outside of the mode, and you do not want to be encountering them for the first time in a tournament. And I can't guarantee it, but I would say, given how I play Snap, I probably played more Conquest than the majority of people in that tournament. That's just a lot of people spend their time on ladder. I just play Conquest.
How
It
actionable do
changes
you
things.
think that it was? I come from the sort of exact opposite perspective where like I got good at card games by getting to a level where I was able to play against better players. That is the
Yeah.
thing that made me good at card games, is like I like when I got good at Magic, in as much as I was ever good at Magic, it was because all the MPL were on the Mythic ladder and I got to play against them all of the time, right?
Right.
That was really helpful for me. Do you
I
find that the lack of matchmaking in Conquest makes that more difficult?
No. I think that makes it a less useful thing for being good at Snap. I think that is true. But I think that the best I can liken it to is like chess, where like you can be as good as you want at chess, but if you start playing bullet or blitz, it's a different game. You can't be good at bullet or blitz by just being good at chess. You need to have practiced under those conditions. Conquest is inherently different from Marvel Snap in how the game plays out. And if you don't know how that is, because you are very good at snap, you can be the best snapper in the world. But if you haven't played Conquest, the person that understands Conquest and is 10% worse than you at snap, 20% worse than you at snap, will still have an edge against you because they will understand the intricacies of the mode you're playing more than you will, and they will take advantage of that.
I think that's a great place to end it. That was a phenomenal interview. Like, we just did a podcast. You realize that, right? Like, this could go on podcast platforms. This is an hour and 22 minutes at the time of I'm clicking.
I'm a yapper.
That's unbelievable, man. Like, there's a reason you're a caster, man. That was an incredible piece of work. Shout out to Monty. Follow him on all of the platforms. We'll put links in the description down there. I'll try and bully him into coming on stream at some point and playing Cerebro with me or something. I don't know. We'll see if that pans out. And thank you so much for watching. I've been KMBest. He's been Zapgaze, your world champion, and I'll see you in the next one.